too.
I wish I weren't sick anymore. Then maybe Grandpa wouldn't feel like he has to come to tell me stories.
Hello there, wee little lad. Do you want to be just like the characters in your storybook?
Not really.
All you've got to do is follow 12 simple steps.
12? That's a lot.
Yes, well, you're already doing the first step, the status quo. Every hero starts out with a normal life. Take James Douglas, for instance. He had quite the normal life as an oppressed peasant in Scotland before the war.
But I'm not a peasant or oppressed.
To get out of the oppression, James Douglas had to go to war.
I don't want to go to war.
Neither did he. In fact, a lot of the Scottish people didn't want to go to war. Why they needed people like James the Black Douglas to help them out and go to war for them. That is our third stage, assistance.
What's the second stage?
I.e., the call to adventure. When our hero, James Douglas, learns that he needs to fight for what is right. This is when the Scottish people were being taxed so much that they knew they couldn't live under Britain any longer.
Is this story going to take very long? I'd like to play my game.
It might not seem like it now, but this is a very important story, so shut up and listen. The next part of our story is called The Departure. Many of the Scottish people wanted no part in the war or in British control, so they fled to Ireland and became the Ulster Scottish. During that same part of the story, the bravest and the strongest men in Scotland went to war against Britain. This includes King Balliol of Scotland, his best man William Wallace, the next Scottish king Robert the Bruce, and our hero, the most feared warrior in Scotland, James the Black Douglas. All was not fine and dandy for either group. For starters, the Irish didn't just accept the Ulster Scottish when they first arrived in Ulster. They were confused and a little scared. You have to understand, the Ulster Scots were not privileged and rich Scottish people. They were wee people like you who didn't have the material or money to go to war. And on the other hand, the people who went to war were terrified. See, the British were a powerhouse of colonies and armies, and the Scottish were just a few men with a fire in their hearts and a sword in their hands. They fought anyway, for their families, for their freedom. Eventually, the Scottish people gained an upper hand. And this is the approach of the story because, well, you'll see what happens. The British King, Edward II, tricked the French Pope into siding with him. This allowed the infamous Battle of Falkirk to take place. During this battle, two of the best-known Scottish heroes were captured and killed, William Wallace and his king Balliol. Hope seemed lost for our Scottish army. They seemed they had lost for good. This is what we call the crisis. But thanks to Bishop Wishart and Robert the Bruce, the Scottish treasure that is the Stone of Scone was used. Robert the Bruce was crowned king. And though he had a rough start as the king, he eventually gained his footing. The result is the Battle of Bannockburn, where the Scottish regained their overconfidence and sense of justice. The Scottish won so completely in this battle, thanks to our very own James Douglas, that they were sure that this was the end. After this, the Scottish returned to their homes, but Britain still doesn't recognize them as their own country. Then something big happens. King Edward II dies, and King Edward III takes his place. In this event, King Robert Bruce sees an opportunity. He troops and his best soldier James Douglas and invades Britain, threatening to annex it. This is the new life. They are so successful that Britain gets so nervous that it gives Scotland its independence. Then the status quo once more. Our Scottish people living in a new independent Scotland. Except for the Ulster Scottish. They are still in Ireland. Well, that's it for today, lad. Your mother won't let me stay for too long.
More news on the Rohingya massacres. Yet another village has been burned down near the state of Rakhine. It's that even though the Myanmar government has promised that they would stop, they continue to burn down more villages. Millions of Rohingya Muslims have been chased out. Their leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, has barely addressed the murders.
We are only kicking out the terrorist group. This is all perfectly fine.
She has won a Nobel Peace Prize in the past, and yet she can ignore the millions getting chased out. We'll be taking any questions now. What are these massacres? How did it even start? It started with years' worth of prejudice against the Rohingya, even when they were just living in their homes. Then, one day, a group of Rohingya named the Arsa decided they'd had enough and attacked police stations. Ugh, it's one of you dreaded Rohingya Muslims again. What are you doing over here? Whoa, what are you planning on doing with that gun? That event was what started the massacres. The police have retaliated by murdering millions of women, men, and little kids, burning down houses,
and pushing the little kids into fires.
What's gonna happen now?
We don't know. They have fled, but Bangladesh has said they will no longer be taking any refugees soon. Now, millions of Rohingyas sit in refugee camps and just wait for someone to help. Bangladesh keeps the refugees in refugee camps, not so different from the concentration camps that Germany had during World War II. Myanmar has even planted landmines along the border so they cannot return. The future appears to be very bleak for this minority, and that's all the questions we have time for today. Black Shoes News, signing off.
Well, this is what I meant, Larry. Those stories you hear of are still happening in modern times.
How, Gramps?
They had a quest, just the same as the Scottish did. They're searching for their freedom as well. And they both had to run somewhere, to escape their own homes. They've both faced terrible things during their journeys. I think the only true difference is that Rohingya's story isn't quite done yet. They haven't got the happy ending, but it'll come.